The rain started before dawn, a soft hiss on the tin roof of the holiday bark that turned into a steady drumming by the time we loaded the Ute. "Met service says clearing," Tom said, tapping his phone. He was the optimist. Hannah shrugged into her red rain shell and checked the PLB twice. "Will passed out boil-in-bag meals like he was Saint Nick." I tightened the laces on my boots and tried not to think about last night's news alert. Another tourist missing in Fiordland, last seen near a swing bridge. We were not tourists. That was something we said to each other, like a charm. We were locals, mates since school, decent at tramping, careful with maps. Labour weekend, 4 days, a loop through beech forest to a high saddle and down to a lake hut. DOC track, orange markers, a route we'd all done in pieces but never end to end. The road from Tay and now glistened with puddles, ferrets darting like shadows. We left the Ute at the trailhead where the gravel turned to slick mud and a green sign pointed into a tunnel of dripping trees. A laminated notice on the DOC board flapped in the wind. "Track damage beyond Upper Kowai Hut. Proceed with caution." Someone had underlined caution so hard the pen cut the plastic. The first hours were damp and quiet. Bellbirds rang from somewhere high. Every step squelched. Where the track sidled above a slip, the forest fell away into grey, and mist opened like a bruise over the valley. At a stream crossing, Tom offered his hand, joking like he always did, but his eyes kept cutting toward the bush as if listening for another voice. We stopped for scroggin beneath a giant rimu scarred with old possum claws. There were marks lower down too, fresh and parallel, like someone had dragged a rake through the bark at shoulder height. "Stags," Will said, though he didn't sound sure. Deer prints pocked the muck around the roots, but something else had pressed there too, long slits that didn't quite match the hoofs. Hannah took a photo, then quietly positioned herself so the tree was at her back. By mid-afternoon the drizzle thickened into rain that felt solid. The beech leaves shone like coins. The orange triangles arrived slower, the track ran with water, and each swing bridge bucked in the gusts. From one, we saw the river muscle itself around boulders the size of cars. I imagined slipping, the water filling my hood, the cold clamping shut. "Nearly there," Tom called, though we all knew he was guessing. The hut appeared as a dim rectangle through curtains of rain. Upper Kowai, 12 bunks, tin chimney, a smudged windowsill lined with burnt matchsticks. Inside smelled of damp wool and smoke, and the old iron frying pan that lived by the hearth. There were names in the logbook, careful and casual, the block handwriting of Germans and the tidy loops of retirees. The last entry was 2 days ago. A solo hunter named R. Not I. Heard strange calls late. Not Kia. Below that, in the margin, an arrow and 3 hooks were drawn in biro, the kind of tiny symbols you make when your pen doesn't want to work. Tom laughed, soft and wrong. Someone's idea of a joke. He signed our names anyway. The rain on the roof hardened to hail. Hannah stacked kindling. Will methodically checked the hut radio. "Dead," he said. "Battery gone." In the corner, near the boot rack, I found a loop of orange cord knotted around a nail. The free end was snapped. Fibers flared like a bitten straw. I didn't mention it. Wind combed the beech tops all night, and the chimney made an animal throat when the draught was wrong. We took turns feeding the fire, each pretending to sleep when our watch ended, until Hannah sat up and said, "We're not children." Toward morning I dreamed of a swing bridge swaying, and a man walking toward me who didn't touch the wire with his hands. When I woke, the hut was blue with early light and the rain had softened to a whisper. We ate porridge, packed, and left a note in the logbook. Full party heading for saddle. R. Ngatai's margin symbols stared like fishhooks. I flipped back through the pages while the others shouldered packs. Near midwinter there was a page with nothing but an arrow, and the words looked both ways, written by someone who didn't sign. Maybe a hut joke that had moved along the system like a virus. The track beyond the hut was worse. Slips had chewed the benched parts to ledges the width of a boot. Twice we lost the orange markers and stood together in the rain, compasses out, admitting the thing you never want to say, "I don't know." The river voice grew louder, then muffled again as the valley twisted. At one washout, a new DOC marker had been nailed crookedly to a sapling at ankle height. The nail was bent, the triangle abraded as if someone had dragged it face down. We found the hunter's bivvy where a side stream braided into the main track, a low tarp, its sleeping mat gone, a scorched ring of stones that were cold to the touch. A mug lay on its side in the fern, printed with a number for a Blenheim butcher. "Maybe he shot through at first light," Tom said. "Maybe," Hannah said, and pointed at the river stones. One had 4 shallow grooves in it, set perfectly parallel. I picked it up. My thumb fell into each groove, as if the rock were made to be held. By midday we hit the saddle. The cloud tore and showed a mouth of pale sky. On the far side, the track tipped into head-high dracophyllum and a staircase of roots greasy with rain. Somewhere below, a lake flashed for an instant like a sheet of broken tin, then disappeared behind mist again. We stopped on a rock the size of a couch and ate in silence while our breath steamed. That was when we heard it, a call that rose from the bush like wind in a bottle, then split into 3 wrong notes, as if someone were learning a tune. It wasn't Kia. It wasn't Ruru. Goat. Will tried. A goat with a recorder? Tom said, grinning, but his mouth stayed tight. We pushed on. The light drained from the world faster than seemed fair. In the trees off the track I saw a flash of red, Hannah's jacket, and turned to say something, but she was right behind me. The red moved again, deeper among trunks, then vanished. We arrived at the lake in a kind of hurry, the water taut as skin under the dusk. The hut door was unlatched and rocking. Rain ticked on the windows, though the sky seemed drained of color entirely now. Inside, our headlamps found chaos. Bunks pulled down, a cupboard tipped, a sack of coal split across the floor. On the table, the hut axe was buried blade first in the map, as if someone had consulted it and then left a punctuation mark. A strip of orange cord dangled from a bunk post. The free end had been cut clean. We set about writing what we could. The coal went back into its sack. The bunks were lifted. The axe eased from the map. The blade had punctured the paper at the saddle and traced a faint tear toward the lake outlet, as if someone had tried to cut themselves a shortcut. A smell hung in the air that wasn't damp wool or smoke. It was sharp, faintly sweet, like antifreeze or crushed fern. Windows? Will asked. Hannah checked each latch. One window had fresh scrape marks on the frame, wood curled like shavings beside a knot of wet hair caught on a nail. We stared at it stupidly. It was too long and dark for deer. It could have been from a hood, a cuff, a torn beanie. The hut radio still wouldn't wake. Tom climbed onto the veranda bench to get a bar, holding his phone like an offering to indifferent gods. "Nothing," he said. "We can be out in 2 days if we move." He didn't say if the lake track was clear. We agreed, because that was what we did. We cooked, we changed into dry layers, we washed our socks in the sink and wrung them hard. Darkness came early and deep. The lake, 5 meters from the door, was a single piece of felt. We played 500. Hannah and I lost, 3 games to 0. The silence after the last hand was the worst kind, the kind packed with everything no one wanted to say aloud. It began again near midnight, that call rising and splitting, closer than before. The hut became a bell the sound passed through. Hannah stood up, carefully, as if standing too fast would break the thin skin of sense. "It's a goat," Tom said, and we all pretended to believe him. Will laced his boots and checked the axe, then set it down without comment. Something moved along the veranda. Not heavy. Pausing between boards. A child could make that wait. So could a man trying to move like a child. Shadows ticked under the door. The latch lifted and settled with no change in the wind. I remembered the cord knotted to a nail in the first hut and the clean-cut end in this one, and my skin tried to leave my body. Hannah unzipped her jacket pocket and laid the PLB on the table. If they open the door, we set it off, she said. We listened to something breathe through the cracks. The breathing was irregular, like a man with dust in his lungs, or like leaves moving inside a funnel of air. The steps receded. Silence pulled tight. An hour later, the sky thinned a little, and we slept like people who have merely spent time next to sleep. In the morning, prints freckled the mud. Hoof marks, yes, but lighter than I expected, and double impressed as if the hoof had two edges. Between them were narrow slots, each the length of a cigarette, pushed deep as a fingertip. Will crouched and measured with his knife handle and didn't say a word. We left quickly. The lakeside track tunneled through manuka and fern, the ground under us soft and springing. Something had tugged many of the orange triangles free and retied them with new knots, knots so neat they looked like they had been taut. At the outlet, where the river shouldered away into boulders, a handline was strung between two trees. It was orange cord. Halfway along, it ended abruptly in a clean cut. The free end stirred in the wind. We followed the handline until it stopped, then waded the shallows with poles braced like crutches. The rain had gone. A thin sun lifted steam from the beach. The track climbed. On shed bark a pale thumbprint looked new. Then came a dull clack, wood on wood. Trap line, Hannah said. The clacks led onto a spur the map didn't show. We checked the compass, eyed triangles, some tied with neat knots, and chose the official markers, though the clacking felt right. By late afternoon a slip had erased the benched path. The only crossing was a crawl along exposed roots. Halfway, Tom dropped to a muddy shelf and stayed there, white-lipped, his ankle jammed. We freed him and watched it swell. Back to the hut, Will said. No one argued. We splintered with tent poles and retreated in careful stages. Night rose under the trees. The call came again, very near, and held on one breath. We held ours too. The hut was a darker block. The door we'd latched stood open. Inside, coal swept, maps folded. On the table, a bottle of river water and an envelope. Tom. The neat printing said, "Saw you on the slip. You're heading the wrong way. Follow the traps. Ah. Ngatai." Relief stung. We stepped to the veranda. A man stood at the trees, tall in oilskin, a wooden frame over his shoulder stacked with traps. "Ngatai," Hannah called. He lifted a hand and came on with the deliberate gait of someone used to bad ground. "You've been following my line instead of the track," he said when close. "Some joker's been shifting triangles all season." Inside, he checked Tom's ankle, tried his radio, static, then a voice. "Pickup arranged for morning. Don't open the door tonight," he added. "Boars use the veranda. Or people." We pretended to laugh. He didn't. We slept as if a heavy hand held the roof on. At first light, fresh prints stitched the sand, hoof marks and narrow slots. Beside them, human prints paced and turned, stopping inches from the door, toes always pointing at the threshold. In one, a short piece of orange cord was pressed like a fossil. The chopper arrived late. Not I loaded Tom, then his traps, and the machine shouldered away down valley. The pilot called the wind fluky and told us to follow the trap line. Slips had taken the lake track. So we followed the traps out on a firm bench we hadn't known was there. The triangles we passed had been straightened overnight. At the trailhead the Oota waited under blue. On the passenger mirror, tied in a neat bow, hung a short length of orange cord, cut clean. No one touched it. Driving toward Taya now, we didn't speak. In the pub, a man swore you can call a stag with hose to make 3 notes. Another said possums scream like children if cornered. The barman said there's a bloke who hates trampers and moves markers for sport. Hannah drank water and stared at her phone. Will spun the PLB until it toppled. Tom texted a photo of his strapped ankle from the clinic and added a thumbs up. At closing, we stepped into the car park. Under the wiper sat a page torn from a hut logbook, a margin arrow and 3 small hooks drawn in a row. Below, in tidy block letters, someone had written, "Look both ways." The note could have been a joke, a warning, or the tidy work of some backcountry neat freak. None of the options felt comforting to us.